So before I go on, I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognise the various traditional lands that we do our business today. We acknowledge the elders, past, present, and emerging, of all the land we work on and live on, and their ancestral spirits with gratitude and respect. So today I'm coming from the lands of the Turnbull and the Yuggera people. I live out towards Ipswich, so that is their land. And as we know, exploring and doing work in Queensland, how important it is to have a respectful relationship with the people whose lands that we're working on. So today's outline, I'll give a bit of an introduction to the team so you can start putting faces to names of people you may be interacting with through this process. Talk about the funding, the aims of the program, and also what's changed from round 8, because I feel like hopefully when we do the Menti poll, I'll see who is new to the program and who's had experience before. And we can kind of get a bit of a vibe of where I skew this presentation to. And then I'm really going to talk about quality of applications and where I can help you and give you some tips and tricks that really, hopefully you can put your best foot forward and have a successful project next year. And then I'm going to leave some time for Q&A. I noticed there was a couple of questions put in when people registered for Humentics, which is wonderful. I'm happy to discuss them as well. And then from that stage, people can just jump on and say a few words and ask any questions they'd like to. So the team, for those who haven't met me, my name is Courteney Dhnaram. I've worked at the survey for quite a while, previously working as an economic geologist in the mineral systems research team, and I've moved into the grants manager role this year. I'm going to ask the team to turn their cameras on as we go around so you can start seeing faces too. So many of you may have met Heather before. She's the manager of our grants and engagement team. One of the new faces to the team is Sonia. Sonia looks after the collaborative development program, grants program. So while initially a number of years ago, the only thing we looked after was Collaborative Exploration Initiative, now we do gas grants. We also do CDP. So for anybody who may be a little bit further down the stage with the exploration and might be in mining and considering things like tailings and mine waste, Sonia is the person to talk to. So if anybody wants to get her contact details, just shoot me a message and I can pass them on. You probably all know Evan. Evan is our webinar extraordinaire who looks after all of our engagement events, our roadshows, our Digging Deeper, and all of the webinars we do every month. Lydia, who is our administration officer, she is currently on maternity leave. So we have the wonderful Angela, who has joined in the last 2 weeks, and she'll be one of the people who does a lot of the communication with you guys. Oh, actually. Now I'm going to do some magic. For those who have joined on to Menti, I'd like to know a little bit about you. So hopefully, can I get a thumbs up if people can see my Menti screen on your screen? Perfect. Cool. I'd like to know a bit about my audience. As we're not in a room, so it's a little bit trickier. So I just want to kind of know your experience or your awareness of CEI. So if you guys can jump onto the first question, please. Hopefully you're all in Menti. We'll see. Have you guys applied for a collaborative exploration initiative before? Well, we've got one no, which is delightful. Feel free to say something so I can all put a thumbs. I don't know how we can do this. Hopefully we're all in Menti. If you guys didn't catch the details, potentially someone can share them in the chat. That's good. Oh, yeah, you guys can see menti.com and use the code 8670120 to jump in. Excellent. While this Menti is popping up, we've got a question in the chat about, does anybody in the engagement team have a technical geology background? Yeah, actually, in a good way or sad way, a lot of us are geos. I'm a geo, Heather's a geo, Sonia's a geo. So actually, yeah, half of the team has geology experience. So, oh, nice. Nice to see a lot of people who have applied for funding before. Give everybody another minute. I feel like 10 people out of 30 is a pretty good crack at this Menti thing. So that is excellent. Cool. And then I will jump on to the next question. Oh, wait, no, I'll just give everybody a couple of minutes. I asked this question because often us government employees talk in acronyms and don't abbreviate things. And I talk with quite familiarity with the program as I've been around since its inception as Collaborative Drilling Initiative. So I just want to make sure. Kathy, up the very top of the screen, the Menti login should be menti.com and the number 86701204 should be the best way to jump in. Cool. All right. Never know how quite these things are going to work, but I mean, it's pretty successful. So cool. So a lot more people have previously been around the program, which is lovely. I'm going to jump on to the next question. So have you had a successful CEI project before? So even in CDI, when it was previously just drilling, or part of the more broader exploration geophysics drilling kind of program we run now? Wonderful. Lovely to see people returning. We've had success. It's wonderful. And 4 for no. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of this presentation today. Excellent. And then my last question is, because we work quite closely with other state surveys and we're always looking for things like improvement on how we run it. I'm really keen to know for those, have you applied or been successful in any other state's version of a CEI program? So Western Australia's EIS, the Northern Territory scheme, or the Tasmanian one, or even previously the South Australian and New South Wales one when they used to run co-funding. So we're working on sort of like streamlining some of our terms and processes to be sort of more aligned across states. So it's not such a different sort of process, no matter what sort of state you're applying on. So this is just really useful information to know. Oh, nice. I'll give this just another minute just to see. I'm not actually sure when I close Menti, can people vote if you're still trying to? But feel free, if you didn't do Menti, to talk in the chat and just give your experience with the program. It's really appreciated. Cool. Excellent. So people are familiar with funding. Perfect. All right, I'm going to minimize this, try and do some magic to get back to my screen. Cool. Hopefully everybody can see my talk again. And so since we do have a few people here that are new to CEI, I'll just give a little bit of a background. So GSQ has supported in some way this program since 2007. Funding has decreased and really the amount of money that companies have had to put in has also decreased. So previously we used to do 50% funding for drilling and now you are able to put an application in for the full amount of the costs as long as they're eligible costs. You know, but a lot of companies sort of said, hey, that's still really difficult, especially in the junior exploration sort of industry to be funding it. So we changed our program to sort of help support them. We have previously had narrow activity and region focus. So for those who are familiar in the early days of CEI, it was predominantly focused to northwest Queensland, especially around the Mount Isa area. Now it's opened up to all of Queensland because that's fair. And also we realise that you're still going to get a lot of applications from Mount Isa anyway. And also with the critical minerals focus that have come in currently, it needs to be all of Queensland. Moderate completion rates, really, some years it's really hard. Some years we don't actually have all of our projects even starting or finishing. So that's why we've tried to increase the money to really, hopefully that'll be a little bit of the push, so that companies and the state can maximise the benefits. And, I hope we're on the right track because we've had a lot of really great endorsement from industry, from both the CEI and the CEI programs. So currently the CEI funding comes from QRIDIP, or the Queensland Resources Industry Development Plan. We were able to get $22.6 million for 4 rounds of funding. There was a really big push specifically to focus on critical minerals, and really, move to, everybody in the world is trying to transition to low carbon economy, and Queensland is really trying to be on the front foot with this. Where we are now, we're actually in our second last round currently under our current funding package. So we're in round 9. So round 9 has $5 million for projects, and we have the next round that'll start at a similar time next year for another $5 million. So time is currently running out, so it's really good that you're here thinking about putting an application, but obviously, fingers crossed, we can continue to have funding for CEI in the future. So for those super unfamiliar with CEI, what are the aims? Well, actually, we're really trying to help companies explore in high-risk areas or for high-risk models. We're trying to convert the risk of exploration into opportunity. We're trying to encourage the discovery and development of Queensland minerals deposits, critical minerals deposits, strategic minerals deposits, really just deposits in general, because hopefully that can lead to mining, which is always a good thing. We're trying to support direct exploration activities. So I'll talk a little bit later about eligible and ineligible costs, but really it's like the cost of getting the rig there, the cost of drilling, the cost of assays, but not necessarily going towards staff time. And really, part of QRIDIP's plan is to set a vision for a resilient, responsible and sustainable resources industry. And hopefully we can do a little bit through CEI. So what has changed for round 8 for those people who are familiar with? So essentially, we've decided to decrease the total amount per project that is available. So last year it was 300,000 and now it's 250. And the logic behind that is hopefully we can try and help as many companies as we can and kind of spread the love a little bit. We've also decided to make the maximum funding capped per applicant at $400,000. So for those who may have lots of wonderful projects looking at different deposits or maybe in different stages in your exploration across the state, you can put in 1, 2, 3, 4 applications, but just know that the total amount of money across those applications is going to be $400,000. And similar to what I mentioned, it's really just trying to help as many companies as we can. We've done a little bit of tweaking to the scorecard. So essentially, we've added more points towards the accurately costed budget and time frame. So while this is my first year in the job, I've kind of had a look around the last couple of years and found that something that is super important, I think, to have your best crack at when you're putting your application is putting realistic timeframes and budgets together. So we all know that unfortunately, things cost more money in, you put your quote in, you get a quote now, you do it next year, things are going to cost more money and potentially take more time. But I think if you allow that in your application, then people who are assessing it can understand that you've really had a good think about it. Collaboration is always supported. One of the things we've always been really, really keen to see, we actually had one this year, is applications where companies team up to do sort of more regional proposals. So that could be a larger geophysical survey where one applicant is driving it, but other tenure holders join in to give us that really big picture survey, or it could be some ground geophysics or geochemical sampling. It sort of helps us step into the part of the work that maybe a survey can't necessarily do, but still gives us big regional data sets that helps industry. And really, we're always really trying to seek more innovative proposals. So, we want to be part of companies testing new ideas and new technologies, and then hopefully from that CEI proposal in the future, if it's successful or the technique works, then we sort of see that taken up across the industry. Something I also like to mention that I always kind of mention that if previously, if you have been a successful recipient of CEI, we always like to come knocking and have you guys present at different events, and sing our praises hopefully, and we will sing yours too because it's both ways. So for the round 9 scorecards, for those who haven't had a chance to dive into the guidelines, which I will have a link later on for everybody to have a look. We've just tweaked a couple of things. So this year, we always have our scorecards split into 2 things. So one is your technical proposal and one is your program potential. In the past, we often see quite a lot of the higher marks and the really good content that comes in the technical proposal, because obviously you've got to really justify your model and the techniques that are involved. But something I think is really nice to be thinking about is what is the potential of the work that you're doing and how you can write that in your application. So for example, what are you doing that can potentially help industry, or other models and ideas, testings are going to change how people think about what's happening, what the geology is, or what the mineral systems are in that region. That is weighted quite heavily. So we have 50% that goes towards a technical proposal, but we also have 50% that goes towards the program potential. So it's really good to think about when you're writing your application, and this is obviously if it works, your ideas are right, but essentially what benefits it can give. And then specifically what we've changed this year is I've moved the amount of points from your initial write-up of the geology, the regional geology and previous exploration, and added 5 points onto the budget and realistic timeframes. So I kind of like to run through the key dates of this round 9 program for those who, one, haven't looked at the guidelines yet, or are sort of not as familiar with the sort of obligations with reporting that happens if you're a successful applicant. So we're in the application stage now. The applications are closing at the 11th of December this year at midnight Queensland time. So feel free to get them in anytime from now, and or a couple of minutes before midnight, as I often see on the last day. Project commencement isn't until the 1st of April. So what happens between the time of the applications are submitted to us and you guys can get on the ground and start doing work is they go through an expert assessment panel, internal and external, who go through and have a look at all the proposals that come in. And then they rank them and funding is awarded. And then potentially from March to April is the time where we try and get all our paperwork and everything ready to do, everybody to get on the ground from April. Also, I'd like to mention that funding is awarded post-completion and payment of your activities. So it isn't what is a traditional grants program. That's why I try to stay away from the word grant and use funding. Essentially, it's a reimbursement activity. So project commencement phase, you can get on the ground from April. Hopefully the weather's great and you guys can get going. We have trialled this year and last year having your CCA in place and your land access finalised from until the 1st of September. So as part of your application, oh, yeah, that's really good, Prue. 2025. It's 2024. I am super sorry. Thank you for picking that up. It is closing December this year, not next year. Great. Cool. Thank you for in the chat for bringing that up. Land access finalised. So to do your applications, you need to have your land access CCA draft submitted. So that really shows that you are negotiating with the landholders now, but we know things take time. As long as everything is in place for you to get on the ground and have your activity start by the 15th of September. So this year, what we've done is we've decided to push out the activity completion date. So we've noticed that, sometimes we do have a longer wet season and sometimes it just takes longer to get on the ground. So instead of having to have your activity completed by November, it is the 5th of December. And then we've also decided to push out the timing to get your final report, your data, everything together into the next year after that, so January 2026. Because we also know that it can be a bottleneck over Christmas to get things back like assays, and normal timeframes of 4 to 6 weeks can blow out to 8 weeks or like 11 weeks as I've had once. So while no one really wants to work over Christmas, it does give people that chance to not have to stress and put the work in. Oh, good question, Greg. It is the 1st of April 2025 is when funding will be announced. I'm looking at chat at the same time. So hopefully I said 2025 on the slide before, but honestly, time and dates, it's hard work. It's not my big skill set. So final reports come in on the 29th of January. From there, 6 months out from that date, all the data is kept confidential by the department, and then we do a data release, and this time will be in July of 2026. So everybody's application is kept confidential and nothing is published. When your final report comes in, you get 6 months of all the data and information to stay confidential, and then we publicize it and we put it out there for all the other explorers to have a look at. Then 6 months essentially out from there, your drill core and samples are due to be submitted. So you can submit them predominantly to Mount Isa if that's closer, or to the Brisbane facility. And you can submit them anytime beforehand if that's easier, but that is your due date and part of your obligation under the funding deed to submit your drill core. So I just want to kind of mention, and this is, if you're successful, it's in the funding deed and we do a presentation about it, but also it's really important to have sort of two-way communication as this process goes through. So, we need to have notice, which can be an email or a phone call about when you guys start, when you guys complete your activities. This allows us just to see broadly how you're tracking and how we're tracking in regards to payments and finance and all that kind of jazz. And then essentially, if there's variations, because we know things happen, there can be access issues, there can be ground issues, there can be even when you're drilling and you think you've hit your target, 500 meters before your proposed end of depth, end of hole, have a chat, call me up. It's really important to have this communication so we know the worst possible thing on our end is that we can get to the end and final reports are submitted and we're unaware that not everything was completed. It just involves a lot more chasing up on the back end. And then obviously we can't award all of the funding. So eligibility criteria. So I think it's really important quickly just to talk about what you need to have sorted on your end to be able to apply. So you need to obviously hold tenure in Queensland. That can be a EPM, an MDL or ML. So it's not just EPMs this year. You need to have private liability insurance, have an APM and be registered for GST. Something we ask for is confirmation of contractor support. So, it's a difficult one because not everybody knows exactly what they're doing, in August next year, but it's really nice to have it from your geophysical contractor or your drilling contractor to say, we have availability if you're successful to complete this. Financial capability is also really important, and this needs to be provided as a letter from your director as costs are reimbursed at the completion of the project. I'm going to touch a little bit later on land access, but it's really important to have them in place or be working towards them if you're successful. And you need to be compliant. So you need to have your rent paid, you need to have all your reports in and everything in regards to having your EPM, in good standing. That needs to be before you apply in December because these things are checked before your applications are assessed. So I had a question in the Humentics about environmental authorities and whether they need to be approved, if there's potential variations and that sort of stuff. So yes, that normally needs to be all in place before the application deadline, which is the 11th of December. Obviously, there is a little bit of case by case basis. So particularly like if people have things that are being varied or, issues going on, you can talk to the hubs or you can shoot a message to me and we can kind of see whether you're actually eligible to apply this time. So for land access, is kind of a tricky thing. Part of your documentation that you need to submit with your application is that you have access agreements in place with the landholders. which is one thing. And then also you need to have evidence that you have your native title agreement in place. And for those who are doing high impact activities, so things like drilling, you need to have the provision for cultural clearances, which do not have to be completed before you apply, but you need to be able to, have that good relationship to be able to have them completed before you drill. And also potentially have private Section 31 agreements with the different traditional owners to be able to have your access. And I've added 2 links down the bottom, which aren't that clear right now, but on the version I send out, I will. One is about the native title notice, and one is about the expedited agreement under Section 31 that needs to be in place. For those who had a crack at applying or were successful last year, we have a web form. So have everything ready before you lodge your application. I know that last year it was a bit hit and miss. This year we actually have a save function, so you can put it all in, come back to it within 7 days, which is brilliant. I'm really excited about that. Please allow the time to step through the web form, as it's really important. And anything that has an asterisk is mandatory, and it is not going to let you proceed. So that is really the things I mentioned before about your eligibility. So really, what is the difference from a successful application or potentially having an unsuccessful one? So common failures we see year after year, round after round, is really when you can tell that there's been insufficient preparation. So hopefully this year we've given potentially 3 months of time to get your application in. So that allows the time for that to happen. But honestly, it's quite obvious when there hasn't been the time into it. And I think, it's only fair on us because you're looking to get funding. So it's really appreciated to see the effort put in. It's really important to explain how your project is collaborative. We're really looking for innovation. I think you really need to spend some time thinking about it, and also why your project is different from potentially the 100 submissions that are being put in. I'm going to probably harp on about this over and over, but map and cross sections, poor figures. Honestly, they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So it's entirely frustrating when there's no grid references or annotated, and a proposal doesn't have even the survey outline, maybe of the geophysics that you are trying to acquire, so people can kind of understand exactly what you're trying to answer by flying or doing this sort of activity. Expected outcomes. I think it's really important to sort of say, not just for the program potential for other players, but exactly what you are trying to achieve through this activity. So, what is the drilling trying to achieve? What are you expecting to see from the geophysics survey? What are you trying to get out of this network? It's really important to clearly address this in your proposal. And I'm going to touch on later, poorly costed budgets. I'll talk about that later, but honestly, just seeing estimated numbers or just seeing numbers that honestly look like they're being plucked from thin air with no justification, it just doesn't quite hold up. All you need to do is justify where these numbers came from. I did a drilling program 6 months ago, and this is kind of what it cost me. Totally fine. But just numbers with no justification aren't great. So, good, bad, and ugly, what do we really see? So the quality of applications really varies markedly. It's really nice though, for the last couple of years, we've seen some really, really good applications. So I feel like as a whole, everybody's really putting the work in. Fail to prepare to fail. Just please put the effort in. It's a lot of work to assess all of these things, and we really want to see the funding going to the right projects, and that involves people who put the effort in with their applications. Read the guidelines and, contact us if you are unsure about any of the questions. Assess your own application. So this was something that was really interesting to me. I hadn't really thought about it, but, take the scorecard and get someone in your team to have a look and see where they would rank it. Yeah, because it's very clear in the scorecard how the numbers are addressed before, the different questions and what we're looking for. So just have a crack at it and see. And provide all the evidence and supporting documents. So I've added a link here, which is the Business Queensland to writing a grant application. Look, you can get people to put together and pay them to put together your application for you, which is great, but there's a lot of really good resources out there about how to put applications in. So this is direct feedback that we've had previously from the assessment panel over the last couple of years, and I'm not going to necessarily touch so much on the good because I feel like it's quite clear, having articulated projects, really having really innovative ideas, the sort of data set that is going to be used and really important, not just for the company, but for the industry, bolstering regional geological knowledge undercover. That is brilliant. Everybody wants to know what's out there. It's really more the poor application. So spell check, please. It's your friend. Please spell check. It's really great. Lacking justification for any of the work that you're doing. Vague locations of drill holes. So often we see, hey, we've got this geophysical survey and we've got a bunch of targets. So we would like to drill. And that's it. So there's no cross section, there's no locations on a map. They're just kind of like, if we get the money, then we're going to drill. Doesn't really hold up. We kind of need to see exactly what you're planning to do as part of your activity. Obviously, I've mentioned no geology maps, no figures, no information on, methods. So you're going to do assays, but you say we're going to do like a 20 element suite, but you don't mention the elements being assayed for or potentially even the methods. And for some different deposit types and mineral systems, actually really matters what methods you're using. And sometimes it's about the proposal not really adding to the prospectivity of the area. So something that is more standard exploration that you already know exactly what you have, and potentially it's maybe just more drilling to, extend your known deposit. It's not really innovative and doesn't quite fit in CEI. So tips for writing a good proposal, please be comprehensive but concise. You don't win any prizes for the amount of pages and words you put in your presentation. As long as it explains what you're trying to do, a succinct proposal is wonderful. Please do not repeat information. We have put out a template about specifically things like your relevant geology and previous work section. You don't have to have everything that's ever been done ever in the region and all understandings about the different ideas, but just the information that is key to the model and idea you're testing. Clear maps, diagrams, and cross-sections, please, 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 please. And we have updated the technical proposal template on the webpage. So hopefully that steps you through, one, what's expected, and two, there's kind of like little hints in there and really spell out specifically for each part what we'd like to see in there. So if you haven't looked at it this year, it is a little bit different from last year. So I really recommend everybody jumping on and having a look. So in regards to, previously the tips are just about how your proposal looks and is it spelled right? Are your figures clear? So the tips about actually the technical aspects, explain your model, explain how whatever your program is, testing your model in these greenfield areas, detail what your data processing and your analysis techniques and link them to your model. Support your model with comprehensive research and really state the problem you're trying to solve and explain how the activity you're seeking funds for is the most appropriate method. It's really, really important because the applications are judged on technical merit. So I think you need to really, stick it all in there. The people who are assessing are experts and are familiar with the sort of techniques and technologies. So just whack it in, even if it's in an appendix, if you think that that information is key for people to understand what you're trying to do. So budgets and timeframes, please be realistic with both your budget and your timeframes. I don't really recommend using quotes from like a previous application from a couple of years ago, because as we know, everything is expensive. Things are going up crazy. Estimated costs, look, I don't mind if estimated costs are put in as long as there's a justification on why and it's a reasonable estimated cost. Why do I mention this? Well, actually the funding amount can't be increased even if your costs increase. So put the work in to try and figure out, what it's going to cost, and even worst case scenario, what it's going to cost, because once the funding deed's signed, even if the costs are more, or you had something you hadn't thought about including in your budget and it wasn't picked up at the time, we can't actually add it on because the money is locked in. So I've got activity should not commence before the 1st of April. Obviously, we try to get the funding deeds out to you a couple of weeks before. Potentially, if everything's signed off on our end, you can start at the very end of March, but we try to aim for let everybody know that April 1st is the start date. And as I mentioned, it's really a reimbursement claim. So payment is an acceptance of the final report, data, and the eligible expenses. So the eligible expenses are stated in the guidelines about what's in and what's not eligible. And when you're successful next year, I also run a webinar that goes through what's expected of the data, the formats, and the final report too. So where can we help? This is hopefully a chance for you guys to ask any questions. I'm happy to do one-on-one meetings if this is your first time in applying, and whether you just want to know, is the project and your idea really CEI? Feel free to send me a message and we can have a chat. I just put a bunch of links here because a lot of the parts of the assessment program process actually isn't the geological aspect. So if you've got questions about your tenure compliance, you want to make sure everything is A-OK before you apply, just contact the Mineral Hub. If you potentially have done only low impact work on your tenure, and this is the first time potentially doing something like drilling, and you just need to make sure you've got everything ticked off, land access and native title contacts here. And it's really good. We're all here to help. So feel free, if I can't answer your question, I can definitely get in touch with somebody in the Reach team or the hub that can kind of help out. Cool. So this is the best email to contact us. This is a QR code that is for the main website. That gives you the CEI application details, also the guidelines. And I am open for questions. Thank you. And I'll go to the chat to have a quick squiz.
Hey, Courtney, it's Evan. Keith Whitehouse has put a question in the chat, so I'll just restate it. Does the ground need to be held in the applicant's name? We're working on ground under an earn-in, and tenement transfer takes place on the meeting commitments.
No, so it's tenement holder or operator. So this should be fine as long as you are clear in the application who also does hold the ground at time of application, and specifically if you are looking on tenement transfer, essentially put in those expected timeframes. We do touch base with the hub, so we'll be able to find out. So no, it's not the be all and end all. Also, I know that sometimes tenures are held in the parent company, or maybe they're in the subsidiary. And there's a part of the web form where you can list all related entities, so we can kind of see that, you know, you are actually applying for your ground. It's just which company exactly holds it. So totally fine. There is another question in the, oh yeah, sorry. Granting is announced hopefully the 1st of April 2025, so next year. Just send an email to, so we had just this GSQ and resources, Robert, and more than happy to have a Teams or an in-person meeting if you've got some more questions. So anyway, it's a open floor. If anybody's got some questions, feel free to jump in. Cool. Clearly I answered everything and everybody has what they need now to write an excellent proposal, and not to forget to like put cross sections and maps in and spell check. So, I mean, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And there is a question in the chat from Mike that says, do you need a CCA for low impact work? I don't believe that you do need a CCA for low impact work. If you go to the land access webpage, which you can just Google Land Access Queensland, you can jump in and you can see it lists specifically what activities are low impact and what activities are high impact, and then you can work it out from there. And I can put you in touch with that team too if you have a question. Oh my God, so many questions, lots of questions. AI as a property, we know that it's sort of cool. So there's a question in the chat about properties are being sold, and obviously we know things happen. The people you're talking to 1 minute might not be the people who own the product. Own that property. Cool. So just state that, hey, we know this is happening and we're not actually sure. Look, honestly, we don't want to discriminate on applications and we want to give everybody a chance. We also know that December versus April is a really long time for things to happen. So if you put an application in December and then you know that there's new property holders in February, just shoot us an email and we can append that to your application. So, you know, I would say potentially if it looks like it's getting close to April and you don't have contact with the landholders, then potentially it's not something that we will be able to fund. There's a question from Rick saying, are there any specific exploration strategies that are favoured over the others? In comparison with the EIS, the CEI successful applications seem to be tilted more towards geophysics. Great question. Actually, this year we had a 50-50 split between drilling and geophysics or non-drilling applications. So it might be perceived that it's more geophysics, but it's honestly just on the strength of the application. So we're not really we're agnostic. Also, we know there's a lot of techniques out there that we might not be familiar with. So no, drilling, geophysics, geochemical sampling, met work, sort of like geochemical vectoring towards a deposit. Honestly, everything is open. It's really just that the way it splits is the way the application's ranked. Honestly, I mean, I love drilling, so I personally would like everybody to drill everything everywhere. But obviously, geophysics is a really great tool. So, honestly, put it in, see how you go. I think also with EIS, predominantly was only drilling, and only recently they have broadened their horizons into geophysics. So that might be why you see this is more geophysics now. Cool. Does anybody have? Hey.
Hi, I'm just confirming the flexibility or potential flexibility with amending an EA prior to submitting the CEI application. In that, obviously the turnaround on the EA amendment can be a bit lengthy, and the field work involved in passing this EA amendment might take a bit of time, and it's not really the time of year to do it. So would you be open to discussions about submitting a CEI application pending an EA amendment earlier in the next year?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one because obviously we want everybody to have EAs in place, and I think an amendment to an existing EA is a slightly different kind of kettle of fish. Yeah, definitely. I don't think that should preclude you putting an application in, but if it does take longer and you get to February, March next year, and it's just not progressing, then I would recommend withdrawing the application in.
All right, thank you.
It's all right. There is a question from Ian in the chat about, with the change of government, do I expect modifications to the scheme? So luckily for round 9, the guidelines kind of are already out there. They've been approved. This round specifically is totally fine. I'm hoping that round 10 is very similarly run to what we're doing right now. And then obviously when we go out to get more funding, there are particular priority change, and a new government is going to bring that. But I'm hoping we see more of the same, actually. That's what I'm really looking forward to. So not specifically. I don't really see exactly what a change of government would change for CEI. It's quite well received from industry, and I feel like the current government and the previous government had that feedback. Well, any last questions? If not, I can free up 15 minutes of your day to go do, which isn't free, just to go do something else. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for attending. Feel free to email me at gsq@resources.qld.gov.au with any of your questions, specifically those who want to have a one-on-one or you're really new to the program and you just want to have a chat. Totally happy to. So thank you everybody for your time.